everyone. Welcome back to Truth is Stranger. I'm Lily.
And I'm Connor, and today's story is one that's been rattling around in my brain for years.
Yeah, this one's rough.
We're going to take you to a tiny mountain town in Northern California back in 1981 for a case so brutal, so bizarre, and so badly mishandled that more than 40 years later, it's still officially unsolved.
This is the story of the Keddie Cabin Murders. And before you think, another old cold case, let me tell you, this one is packed with twists, strange characters, and unanswered questions that will have you shaking your head.
It's got everything: mystery, suspicion, whispers of corruption, and just flat-out horror.
Keddie, California, in 1981. Picture towering pine trees, dirt roads winding between wooden cabins, a slow, quiet way of life.
The kind of place you'd think is safe. Like kids riding their bikes until dark, neighbors chatting over fences. Everyone knows everyone's business.
Whether you want them to or not.
By the early 80s, Keddie was past its heyday as a mountain resort. Most of the cabins had become low-income rentals. Only about 60 or 70 full-time residents. And Cabin 28 would soon be infamous.
In late 1980, Glenna Sue Sharp moved into Cabin 28. She was 36, a single mom with 5 kids, John, Sheila, Tina, Rick, and Greg, ages 5 to 15.
She'd left an abusive marriage in Connecticut, packed up her kids, and moved west to be closer to her brother in California.
Sue was quiet, private. She kept mostly to herself, but she loved her kids fiercely. They didn't have much money, but the kids were fed, clothed, and in school. She also took in John's friend, Dana Wingate, 17, when he needed a place to stay.
From everything people said, Sue was doing her best. This wasn't a woman involved in shady stuff. This was a mom rebuilding her life.
It was a Saturday. Sheila, 14, had plans to sleep over at the neighbors, the Seabolts, just a few doors down.
At home that night, Sue, her sons John and Rick, her youngest Greg, Tina, and Dana.
John and Dana had gone into nearby Quincy earlier, hitchhiking to meet friends, and came back around 10 p.m. The younger boys were watching TV. Sue was in the living room.
We don't know exactly what happened next, but by morning, the world for the Sharp family would be unrecognizable.
Sunday morning. Around 7 a.m., Sheila walked home to grab a church outfit. She opened the front door and froze.
Blood everywhere.
Her mother, Sue, was lying on the floor, bound with tape and electrical wire. Her throat had been slashed.
Nearby, John and Dana were also on the floor. They'd been beaten, bludgeoned with such force that one knife bent at a 30-degree angle. Dana also had signs of manual strangulation.
The scene was pure chaos.
Sheila ran screaming back to the Seabolts. They called authorities, and when police arrived, they found something even stranger.
In a bedroom just feet away from where the murders happened, 3 boys were found alive: Rick, Greg, and 12-year-old Justin Smart, the neighbor's son.
They said they'd slept through it all, through screaming, fighting, murder? If that's true, that's incredible. And if it's not?
Then it means they saw or heard something they were too scared to talk about.
And someone was missing. Sue's 12-year-old daughter, Tina. She was nowhere in the cabin.
That turned a brutal triple murder into a quadruple crime: murder and abduction.
From the very beginning, the investigation had problems. The Plumas County Sheriff's Office wasn't prepared for a crime like this. The scene wasn't sealed off properly. Neighbors wandered in. Evidence was contaminated.
2 early suspects emerged: Martin Smart, Justin's stepdad, and his house guest, John Bobidet. Martin had a troubled marriage. Sue had apparently advised his wife to leave him. And Bo had a criminal record and alleged ties to organized crime.
Both were questioned. Both passed polygraphs. which in 1981 really doesn't mean much.
There were oddities, no forced entry, a phone off the hook, a window broken, but with the glass outside, not inside.
Justin later told police he'd had dreams about that night, dreams where he saw Sue talking to two men, one with long hair and a mustache, the other clean-shaving with short hair. Then violence broke out.
Dream or memory?
And then, 3 years later, in 1984, Tina's remains were found 50 miles away in Butte County. No one knows why she was taken or why she was killed separately.
After that, the case went cold. Rumors swirled in Keddie. Some said Martin confessed to a counselor, that the sheriff at the time was his friend and buried evidence.
Cabin 28 was abandoned, then demolished in 2004. Along with it, possibly the last physical traces of the crime.
For the sharp kids who survived, the trauma never went away.
Yeah, Lily, but in 2013, new detectives took over. They pulled out old evidence and sent it for modern testing.
They found a hammer in a pond, possibly one of the missing murder weapons, and DNA on tape from the scene belonging to an unknown male.
In 2016, a documentary, Cabin 28, The Keddie Murders, reignited public interest. But no arrests.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Connor. When that documentary came out, it didn't just tell the story, it cracked open a lot of old wounds. People who'd stayed quiet for decades suddenly had things to say.
Right, and some of those things were jaw-dropping. Like, there was a recording that surfaced of one of our main suspects, Martin Smart, basically admitting to the murders in a roundabout way.
Yeah. He allegedly told a counselor that he had to kill Sue because she was telling his wife to leave him, and that he killed Tina too.
And you know what's even more frustrating? That counselor apparently went to the Plumas County Sheriff's Office back in '81 to report this, and it went nowhere.
Nowhere. Like, how do you just not follow that up?
Especially when you've got this guy living literally next door to the crime scene on the same night it happened.
Let's talk about Tina for a minute, because her disappearance changes this case completely. This wasn't just a triple murder. It was also a kidnapping.
Exactly. She was 12. She would have been in bed that night, just like her brothers. And somehow, while 3 people were murdered in the living room, she was taken from the cabin entirely.
And for 3 years, nothing. No leads, no sightings, no body. And then in 1984, a man out collecting bottles in the woods near Feather Falls, about 50 miles away, found a human skull.
Dental records confirmed it was Tina. Alongside her remains were part of her clothing and a blanket.
The location's important too. It's remote, and it's not a place you just stumble on by accident. Whoever took her wanted her body hidden.
Now, let's circle back to our 2 prime suspects, Martin Smart and John Bo Boobity.
Martin was a former cook at the local lodge, a Vietnam veteran, and he had a history of violence. Bo was a drifter with alleged ties to organized crime in Chicago. And the kicker? Bo had only been in Keddie for a few weeks before the murders.
Some theories suggest that Sue got caught in the middle of something illegal Bo was involved in, drug trafficking maybe, and was silenced because she knew too much.
Others say it was far more personal. Remember, Martin's wife Marilyn was friends with Sue, and Marilyn has said, on the record, that she believes Martin and Bo were the killers.
When your own spouse says that?
Here's where the frustration really boils over. There are claims that the sheriff at the time, Doug Thomas, was friends with Martin Smart.
Conflict of interest much?
Exactly. And that's not just speculation. There is documentation showing they knew each other well. So if Martin was a suspect, how aggressively was he really investigated?
Add to that the fact that key evidence apparently went missing over the years. Some reports say a bloody jacket found near the scene just disappeared from the evidence room.
This isn't just incompetence. It feels like obstruction.
Now, in more recent years, investigators have suggested there may have been a third man involved in the murders.
Yeah, based on a partial DNA profiles found on some of the tape used to bind the victims.
that DNA doesn't match Martin or Bo or any known suspect in the database.
Which raises the question, was this a group attack? Were the murders premeditated? Or was it a confrontation that spiraled out of control?
If it was spur of the moment, it's hard to explain. The binding, the multiple weapons, the removal of Tina's body, it all feels too controlled.
For Keddie, this was more than a crime. It was like a shadow falling over the whole community. People moved away. Cabin 28 sat empty for years, a rotting reminder. Kids growing up there were told to stay away from it.
And for the Sharp family, the trauma was unimaginable. Sheila, the one who found the bodies, has spoken about living with PTSD, about how she has to compartmentalize just to function.
The surviving brothers, they've carried this all their lives, losing their mother, their brother, their sister, and their friend, all in one night.
And no one being held accountable? Huh, that's a special kind of pain.
The current Plumas County Sheriff's Office says the case is still open and active. They claim to be following leads, and they've retested evidence multiple times with the latest tech.
But without a clear DNA match, without new witnesses, without someone finally confessing, it's stuck.
Some investigators say they're close to solving it, but we've been hearing that for years.
Yeah, close has become this almost mythical word in this case. People have heard it so many times, it's lost its meaning.
Exactly, Lily. And when you've got decades of false starts, rumors, and people pointing fingers, you can't just say we're close without showing something concrete.
So let's break down the main theories, because while the official line is no arrests yet, the unofficial conversations in Keddie have been going for 40-plus years. Theory 1, the revenge killing. This one focuses squarely on Martin Smart. Remember, his wife Marilyn was friends with Sue, and Sue had apparently been telling Marilyn to leave Martin because he was abusive.
And that's not just gossip. Marilyn herself has confirmed this. And she said outright that she believes Martin and his buddy Bo killed Sue, John, and Dana and took Tina.
The motive? Humiliation, anger, control. Martin loses face if his wife leaves him, especially because of something Sue said. And in his twisted thinking, getting rid of Sue would solve that problem.
The thing is, if that's true, it's incredibly personal. And personal murders are often the easiest to solve, if you actually investigate them properly.
Theory 2, the criminal connection. The second theory is that Bo brought trouble to Keddie. Bo was a drifter with alleged mob connections, ties to organized crime in Chicago.
Some people think the murders were about drugs or money, something Sue saw or overheard that she shouldn't have. Maybe John or Dana got tangled up in something without realizing the danger.
That would explain why Tina was taken. If she witnessed something, she'd be a liability. And it might explain the brutality. It wasn't just about killing, it was about sending a message.
Theory 3, the third man. Then there's the third man theory. We know that partial DNA from the scene doesn't match Martin or Bo. So who was he?
Some say he could have been a local who was never on the radar, someone who came and went quietly, who knew the area, knew the victims, and knew how to avoid suspicion.
Or maybe he was just never talked about. Maybe the people who knew his name were too scared to say it. Small towns can be like that. Fear turns into silence.
Theory 4, the random attack. The last theory, at least among the big ones, is that this was random, that some drifter passing through snapped and killed whoever was inside Cabin 28.
Honestly, this feels the least likely to me. The level of violence, the binding, the targeted removal of Tina, it all feels too specific, too invested.
Exactly. Random killers don't usually stick around to bind victims and clean up after themselves.
What still gets me is the way Tina was found. Her remains were scattered in a wooded area, like someone wanted them to disappear naturally over time.
If we had the kind of forensic tools back in '84 that we have now, maybe there'd be more. Maybe there'd be trace evidence on the blanket found with her.
And here's the thing. Remains can still talk
decades later. We've seen cold cases solved with DNA pulled from hair shafts, from degraded bone fragments. It's possible.
If the evidence was kept safe. And that's a big if with this case.
I think about cases like the Golden State Killer, unsolved for over 40 years until genetic genealogy blew it wide open. Or the Bear Brook murders, same thing. Decades of nothing, then suddenly answers.
Right. The difference? In those cases, the evidence was preserved. In Keddie, we can't be sure.
Still, if even one item from that scene has viable DNA, genetic genealogy could crack this, which makes you wonder, why hasn't it been done already?
Yeah, and that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've seen cases from the 70s, even the 60s, cracked wide open with this technology. So why not Keddie?
Some say it's because of money. Genetic genealogy isn't cheap. You need specialized labs, trained genealogists, time to build a family tree from a tiny scrap of DNA.
Others think it's about priorities. Maybe Keddie isn't high profile enough to get bumped to the front of the line, which honestly is heartbreaking. These victims deserve the same efforts as any other.
And there's another possibility, Connor. The evidence just isn't there anymore. Between mishandling in 81, items going missing, and decades of poor storage conditions, we might be hoping for something that's already gone.
If that's the case, it's not just a tragedy, it's a failure.
Let's say for a second that they do still have viable DNA. How would this work?
First, the sample gets sent to a specialized lab. They extract every bit of usable DNA they can find. Sometimes it's a hair without a root. Sometimes it's skin cells from adhesive tape. Then they upload the profile to public genealogy databases, places where people upload their DNA to find relatives.
And then the real detective work begins. They build out family trees, sometimes going back hundreds of years, until they narrow down to living relatives.
And from there, you zero in. You find the closest match, work down the branches, and eventually you land on a name.
It's like untangling a web. Slow, painstaking, but it works.
Which is why it's so frustrating that in Keddie's case, we haven't seen this happen. Because if the evidence is there, the answer might be too.
Think about the Golden State Killer, Joseph DeAngelo. He thought he was safe for life, and then boom, 40 years later, they're knocking on his door with a warrant.
Or the murder of Christine Jessup in Canada, unsolved since 1984, until genetic genealogy nailed it in 2020.
And in those cases, there wasn't a massive pool of suspects living next door. In Keddie, we have suspects, people who've been named for decades.
Exactly, which makes you think maybe someone doesn't want this case solved.
We've talked about the main theories, revenge, criminal ties, the third man, but there's a darker theory, and I think it's worth mentioning.
The cover-up theory.
Yeah, that someone in law enforcement at the time either knew the killers personally or was connected to them through business, family, or other means.
We know Martin Smart was allegedly friends with the sheriff, and in a small town, those connections run deep. If the investigation wasn't impartial from day one, well, that could explain a lot.
It could explain why certain evidence disappeared, why suspects weren't aggressively pursued, why even today there's still hesitation around pushing this case forward.
And I hate to say it, but sometimes protecting reputations takes priority over justice.
Survivors have spoken about the lingering fear. Sheila has said she believes the killers were people she knew, and that makes it worse.
Yeah, because then it's not just about justice. It's about betrayal. Imagine knowing or strongly suspecting who killed your family, but never being able to prove it.
It's like living in a prison you can't see.
And for the community, Keddie isn't big. The murders changed it. Some people left, some stayed but kept their heads down. And that silence, it's like a second crime scene.
So why tell this story now, over 4 decades later? Because time doesn't erase what happened. And because maybe someone out there still knows something.
Sometimes all it takes is hearing the right detail again. Something that jogs a memory or makes someone realize, Oh, that actually matters.
And if we stop talking about cases like this, we make it even easier for them to fade into nothing.
And we can't let that happen. Not for Sue, John, Dana, or Tina.
At its core, this isn't just a murder mystery. It's a story about a family torn apart in one night, about kids who went to bed expecting to wake up safe and instead woke up in a world that was never safe again.
It's about a mother trying to protect her children, a teenager trying to help a friend, a little girl whose life was stolen before it really began.
If you're listening and you know anything, even if it feels small, please tell someone.
Because 40 years is long enough.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please like, follow, and subscribe. We really appreciate your support.
It's goodbye from both of us.
Take care of you.